Most people will never understand why they lose. Not in business, not in relationships, not in the quiet war of social status that every human being fights every single day without ever admitting it. They will work harder than everyone around them. They will be more honest, more talented, more deserving, and they will still lose, and they will spend their entire lives confused about why. Machiavelli was not confused. He saw something that most people are psychologically unwilling to accept. Something so uncomfortable that when his book was published, the most powerful institution on earth, the Catholic Church, banned it immediately, not because it was wrong, because it was right, because it described how power actually operates rather than how we wish it would operate. And the truth it revealed was this: the world does not reward what you are. It rewards what people believe you are. That single sentence is the entire game. Everything else is just detail. But here is what makes this so devastating for most people. They know this on some level. They have felt it. They have watched someone less qualified walk into a room and command it completely. They have seen mediocre people rise to positions they had no business occupying, while genuinely capable people stayed invisible. And they told themselves it was luck, or nepotism, or some mysterious quality they could not name. It was not luck. It was not mystery. It was perception management. Deliberate, calculated, ruthless perception management. And the people who practiced it had learned something that Machiavelli wrote down 500 years ago, and that almost nobody actually absorbs. Reality is negotiable. Perception is not. Let that land. Reality, the actual facts of who you are and what you have done, is negotiable. It can be reframed, it can be repositioned, it can be given a different story and a different meaning. But perception, what lives in the minds of the people around you, what they feel when they hear your name, what they believe without needing evidence, that is not negotiable once it is established. Once a perception solidifies in the mind of another person, it becomes the filter through which every subsequent piece of information about you is processed, confirming what they already believe rather than challenging it. This is why first impressions carry disproportionate weight. This is why reputations are so difficult to reverse. This is why the person who controls the narrative around themselves from the very beginning holds an advantage that compounds over time into something nearly impossible to overcome. Machiavelli did not discover this. He documented it. He looked at the most powerful rulers of his time, Cesare Borgia, Pope Julius II, Francesco Sforza, and he asked a question that no political thinker before him had been willing to ask publicly. What are these people actually doing? Not what do they claim to be doing, not what principle do they say they serve. What are they actually doing that produces and maintains power? And the answer, running like a thread through every example he studied, was this: they are managing what people believe, not what is true, what people believe. Now, I want to go somewhere that most discussions of Machiavelli never go, because most people who talk about the prince stop at the surface observations. They say Machiavelli believed the ends justify the means. They say he was a cynical advocate for ruthlessness, and they miss the deeper psychological architecture underneath all of it. Machiavelli was not simply saying, be ruthless and hide it. He was describing something far more sophisticated. He was describing the fundamental structure of human social cognition, the way the human mind actually processes social information. And once you understand that structure, the specific advice he gives in The Prince stops looking like a collection of clever tricks and starts looking like a unified theory of how human beings form reality. Here is the core of that theory. Human beings do not perceive the world, they construct it. The brain receives an overwhelming flood of sensory information at every moment, and it cannot process all of it. So it takes shortcuts. It uses patterns, it uses prior experience, it uses emotion as a guide to meaning, and it builds a model of reality that feels absolutely true and objective, but is actually a highly filtered, heavily edited, emotionally colored interpretation. This means that what you experience as reality is already a perception. Your reality is a construction, and the people around you are living in their own constructions, their own filtered models of the world in which you are a character. The question is, who is writing that character? If you are not deliberately shaping how you appear in the constructed reality of the people around you, Someone else is shaping it for you. Your enemies are shaping it. Your competitors are shaping it. Random circumstances and misinterpreted moments are shaping it. You are a character in a story being written by default, by accident, by the unmanaged residue of every impression you have ever made. Machiavelli said this is not acceptable for anyone who wishes to hold power. And power in this context does not mean political domination. It means the ability to move through the world on your own terms, the ability to be seen as you choose to be seen, the ability to have your intentions understood correctly and your actions interpreted favorably. That is power, and it begins and ends with perception. Now let us go into the specific mechanisms, because understanding the theory is one thing. Understanding how it actually operates in practice, in the specific daily interactions of your life, is something else entirely. The first mechanism Machiavelli identified is what we can call the primacy of feeling over fact. He wrote that people in general judge more by their eyes than by their hands, by which he meant that people respond to what they witness emotionally before they evaluate it intellectually. The feeling arrives first, the justification arrives second. And once the feeling is established, it will find justifications to support itself rather than evidence to challenge itself. This is not a flaw in human cognition. It is a feature. The emotional brain processes information faster than the rational brain because speed of response was more important than accuracy of analysis for most of human evolutionary history. If you hear a sound in the forest, the animal that feels fear first and asks questions later survives longer than the animal that carefully evaluates the available evidence before deciding whether to run. But in the social world, this ancient wiring creates a very specific vulnerability, and Machiavelli saw it clearly. If you can make someone feel something strongly enough, that feeling will become the foundation of their perception of you. And their rational mind will then spend its energy confirming that perception rather than questioning it. This is why he advised rulers to create powerful emotional experiences deliberately. The public ceremony, the moment of visible mercy, the theatrical display of strength. These are not vanity. They are emotional anchoring events. They implant a feeling in the minds of observers, and that feeling becomes the lens through which all future information is filtered. The modern equivalent is everywhere. The leader who opens a difficult meeting by acknowledging the team's sacrifice before delivering bad news is not being sincere necessarily. They are being strategic. They are creating an emotional experience of being seen and valued that will soften the rational processing of the difficult information that follows. The entrepreneur who tells a compelling story of personal struggle before pitching their business is not simply sharing. They are creating an emotional anchor of relatability and resilience that colors every subsequent judgment the investor makes. This is Machiavelli operating in your world, in real time, in every high-stakes interaction you have ever witnessed or participated in. The second mechanism is the power of consistent image over demonstrated reality. Most people believe that reputation is built through actions. Do good things consistently, and people will perceive you as good. This is partially true, but dangerously incomplete, because what Machiavelli observed is that reputation is built not through actions, but through the perception of actions. And the perception of actions can be managed independently of the actions themselves. A ruler who does 10 good things and 1 terrible thing will be remembered primarily for the terrible thing if the narrative around it is not controlled. A ruler who does 10 terrible things but consistently frames them within a narrative of necessity, of protection, of unavoidable sacrifice for the greater good, will be perceived very differently by the population than the raw facts would suggest. This is not hypothetical. This is history. The rulers who survive in public memory as great men are almost always the ones who most effectively controlled the narrative around their failures and excesses, not the ones who had the fewest failures or excesses. In your life, this translates into something very practical. The image you project must be managed with the same deliberateness and consistency that you bring to the actual work you do. Because in the minds of the people who determine your opportunities, your promotion, your reputation in your industry, your social standing, the image is the reality. They do not have access to the real you. They have access to the perception of you that is formed in their minds through accumulated impression. And that perception will determine how they treat you, what they offer you, and what they believe you are capable of, long before any evidence forces them to revise it. The third mechanism is the strategic use of contrast. Machiavelli understood that nothing is perceived in isolation, everything is perceived in relationship to something else. A mediocre leader who follows a catastrophically bad leader looks like a genius. A brutal policy that ends a period of chaos looks like salvation. A moment of generosity from a known ruthless man lands with far more impact than the same generosity from someone known for nothing else. He advised rulers to manage not just their own image, but the context around their image. To understand that contrast is one of the most powerful tools of perception engineering available. Because you do not need to be objectively great. You need to be perceived as great relative to whatever your observer is using as a reference point. This is why political leaders so often spend energy defining their opponents before defining themselves. Not because the opponent is necessarily more important than the self-image, but because establishing a powerful negative contrast makes the positive image appear brighter by comparison. The shadow makes the light more visible. In your daily life, this operates in subtler ways. The meeting where you remain calm while everyone around you shows stress. The presentation where you over-deliver after setting deliberately modest expectations. The moment where you publicly credit someone else for a contribution, knowing that the generosity will reflect back on your own image more powerfully than any self-promotion would. These are all applications of contrast management. They are all Machiavellian in their structure, even when they appear to be their opposite. The fourth mechanism is the discipline of what is not shown. This is perhaps the most underrated element of perception management in Machiavelli's entire framework, and it is the one most violated in an age of radical social transparency. Machiavelli observed that the rulers who inspired the most powerful combination of respect and uncertainty were those who maintained an essential opacity about themselves, who allowed people to see enough to form a positive impression, but never enough to form a complete picture. Because the complete picture, no matter how impressive, eliminates mystery. And mystery is the psychological condition under which imagination operates. And imagination, when pointed at a powerful figure, always creates something larger than reality. When you show everything, people can measure you. They know the edges of you. They know what you are capable of and what you are not. They know your patterns. They know your weaknesses. They can predict you. And predictability is the enemy of perceived power. When you maintain strategic ambiguity, when you hold parts of yourself back, when you are not fully explainable, people cannot form the comfortable mental box that eliminates their sense of your potential. You remain in some essential way unknown, and the unknown is always larger in the imagination than the known is in reality. This is why the most commanding presences in any room are almost never the loudest or most transparent. They are the ones who speak sparingly but with weight, who listen more than they reveal, who do not need to fill every silence with self-disclosure, who understand that the space around them, the visible absence of explanation, is itself a form of communication. It says there is more here than you can see, and that suggestion alone commands a form of respect that no amount of revealed information could produce. The fifth mechanism is what Machiavelli called the necessity of appearing virtuous regardless of the reality of virtue. This is the most controversial element of his entire philosophy, and also the most psychologically precise. He did not say be virtuous, he said appear virtuous. And he explained exactly why. Because the population, the audience, the collective of observers who form the social consensus about who you are, cannot see inside you. They cannot access your intentions. They cannot verify your private behavior. They can only witness your public performance. And if your public performance consistently projects the qualities that people recognize as virtuous, mercy, honesty, strength, piety, loyalty, they will believe those qualities are real because they have no other data, because the performance is the data they have access to. This is deeply uncomfortable for people who were raised to believe that character is an internal reality that eventually reveals itself externally. Machiavelli is saying something more brutal. He is saying that for the purposes of social power, character is what is performed publicly, and the performance that is most skillfully maintained becomes indistinguishable from the reality in the minds of all observers. Now, before you dismiss this as an endorsement of pure hypocrisy, consider something. Machiavelli was not arguing that there is no value in actual virtue. He was arguing that actual virtue without the performance of virtue is politically useless, and that the performance of virtue without actual virtue is not sustainable indefinitely because it requires a level of discipline and consistency that eventually breaks down without a genuine underlying character to support it. The most durable practitioners of Machiavellian perception management are not people who are fundamentally dishonest performing honesty. They are people who have aligned their actual character with their performed character so completely that the performance has become genuine. They started by managing perception deliberately and then became what they were performing. The mask, worn long enough, becomes the face. This is the level at which perception management stops being manipulation and starts being transformation. When you commit so fully to who you have decided to be perceived as that you actually become it. When the image you project becomes the standard you hold yourself to internally. When the person others see and the person you are converge into a single coherent identity that requires no maintenance because it is no longer a performance but a reality. This is what the most powerful people in history have understood about themselves. They decided who they were going to be. They performed that decision with absolute consistency, and the performance became the person. And the person became a force that shaped the reality of everyone around them. There is something that happens in social dynamics that Machiavelli observed, but modern psychology has since confirmed. When one person in a group commits to a consistent identity with total conviction, the social environment around them reorganizes itself in relationship to that identity. Other people adjust. They unconsciously assign the role that the individual has claimed. They begin treating the person as though the perception were the reality. And that treatment, repeated over time, reinforces and solidifies the perception until it is no longer a claim being made, but a consensus that exists independently in the social reality of everyone involved. This is the full architecture of what Machiavelli was pointing toward. Not a series of tricks, not a collection of manipulative tactics, a comprehensive understanding of how human social reality is constructed and how the individual who understands that construction process can participate in it actively rather than passively. Now let us talk about the modern world directly, because everything we have discussed so far has been building toward this. We are living in an age of unprecedented perception warfare. Every platform, every screen, every professional environment is a theater of constructed identity. And the rules of this theater are Machiavellian, whether anyone admits it or not. Social media is the most obvious example, but it is the least interesting one because most people already understand on some level that what they see there is curated. The more interesting and more consequential perception theater is happening in the invisible spaces, in the way that institutional power is maintained, in the way that professional hierarchies are navigated, in the way that social status is assigned, protected, and taken. Think about the workplace for a moment. Who gets promoted in organizations? Overwhelmingly, it is not the person who does the best work. Research consistently shows that promotion decisions are driven more by visibility, by perceived alignment with organizational values, by the quality of relationships with decision makers, and by the narrative that decision makers hold about the individual's potential than by measurable performance alone. This means that two people doing work of identical quality will have radically different career trajectories based entirely on how their work is perceived and how they themselves are perceived by the people who control the decisions. The person who does exceptional work in invisible ways and fails to manage the perception of that work is, in Machiavellian terms, being strategically naive. They are assuming that reality will advocate for itself. And it will not. Reality never advocates for itself. Only perception advocates for reality. The person who understands this learns to manage both dimensions simultaneously. They do the work with genuine excellence, and they ensure that the perception of that work, the narrative around it, the visibility of it to the right people in the right framing, is managed with equal deliberateness. This is not dishonesty. This is the completion of the work. Because work that is not perceived correctly does not achieve its full effect in the world. And work that achieves no effect in the world is, in practical terms, work that was not done. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He would say, "You have performed the private virtue and neglected the public performance of it. You have built the palace and forgotten to open the doors so that people can see it." Think about relationships, both personal and professional. Every long-term relationship is, in part, a long-term perception management exercise. The relationships that endure are not necessarily the ones with the most compatible people. They are the ones where each person consistently manages their own image in ways that sustain the other person's investment in the relationship, where each person continues to be perceived as valuable, as interesting, as aligned with what the other person needs. When relationships deteriorate, it is often not because the people have fundamentally changed. It is because the perception management has stopped, because familiarity has been allowed to eliminate the deliberateness of impression, because the performance that created the attraction and the trust has relaxed into something unmanaged. And the unmanaged reality, with all its edges and imperfections, no longer competes successfully with the managed alternatives that exist everywhere around it. Machiavelli would not find this cynical, he would find it honest. He would say the failure to maintain the perception of value in a relationship is simply the failure to honor the relationship with the attention it deserves. Because the relationship does not exist in objective reality, it exists in the mutual perceptions of the people in it, and perceptions require maintenance. Now I want to address something that always comes up when these ideas are discussed seriously. The question of ethics. Is perception management inherently manipulative? Is it deceptive? Is the person who practices Machiavellian perception control doing something morally wrong? Machiavelli would refuse the premise of the question. He would say that morality is itself a perception management system, that the moral codes we operate under are collectively maintained performances that serve specific social functions. That the person who claims to operate outside of perception management is simply someone who has not become conscious of the perception management they are already doing. Because here is the reality. You cannot not manage perception. Every time you choose what to wear, you are making a perception management decision. Every time you decide how to phrase something, you are managing perception. Every time you choose which stories to tell about yourself and which to leave out, you are curating a narrative. The question is not whether you are managing perception. The question is whether you are doing it deliberately and skillfully or accidentally and badly. The person who manages perception badly does not thereby escape the game. They simply lose it. They allow the perceptions others form of them to be shaped by accident, by misunderstanding, by the uncharitable interpretations that fill the vacuum left by unmanaged impressions. And they call this honesty, but it is not honesty. It is negligence dressed as virtue. Genuine honesty in the Machiavellian framework would be this: to see the game clearly, to acknowledge that perception shapes reality in human social life, to take responsibility for the perceptions you create in others, and to manage those perceptions with the same integrity you would bring to anything else you care about doing well. The distinction between ethical and unethical perception management is not about whether you are managing perception. It is about the relationship between the perception you project and the reality you actually deliver. The person who engineers a perception of competence and then delivers competence is not a deceiver. They are a communicator. The person who engineers a perception of competence and delivers incompetence is a fraud. The management of perception is the same in both cases. The ethics are determined by what the perception is in service of. Machiavelli understood this distinction even if he was not always explicit about it. His concern was with the mechanics of power, but the mechanics themselves are neutral. Like any powerful tool, they take their moral character from the intention and the outcome of the person who wields them. Which brings us to the final and most important element of this entire framework. What do you want to be perceived as? And is that perception in alignment with who you actually intend to become? Because this is where Machiavellian perception management either becomes a path to genuine power or collapses into sophisticated self-destruction. The person who engineers a perception that has no relationship to their actual character and actual capability is building on sand. The gap between the projected image and the private reality will grow over time. It will require increasingly elaborate maintenance. It will generate increasing internal cognitive dissonance, and it will eventually collapse, usually at the worst possible moment, when the stakes are highest and the exposure is most damaging. But the person who uses perception management as a tool of alignment, who asks, who do I need to be perceived as in order to achieve what I am genuinely working toward? And then uses that answer to guide both their self-development and their image management simultaneously, that person is using the tool the way it was designed to be used. They are not simply managing how others see them. They are using the discipline of perception management as a mirror. They are holding themselves to the standard of the image they project. They are letting the performance pull the reality forward into alignment with it. They are doing what Machiavelli's greatest students throughout history have done. They are using the external discipline of image management to produce internal transformation. This is the highest application of the principle, not the manipulation of others, the engineering of the self. Using the power of perceived identity to construct an actual identity that eventually requires no engineering at all because it has become entirely real. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a guide for rulers, but the rulers he was describing were not all sitting on thrones. Some of them were sitting in exactly the position you are in right now, somewhere between who they were and who they intended to become. Knowing that the distance between those 2 points would be traveled not by waiting for the world to recognize their private reality, but by mastering the public performance of who they were becoming until the performance and the reality converged. That convergence is the endgame. That is what control of perception actually produces at its deepest level, not the manipulation of others, the creation of yourself. Machiavelli knew this. He spent his life watching men become what they performed. He watched others destroy themselves by performing what they were not. And in the cold, clear, unsentimental language of The Prince, he left behind the most honest account of how human social power actually works that has ever been written. The world does not reward what you are. It rewards what people believe you are. And the only people who get to determine what people believe are the ones who understand at every level that perception is not the shadow of reality. In the human social world, perception is the substance of reality itself. Control it, or be controlled by it. There is no third option. There never has been. Machiavelli knew it. Now you do too.